Hello, my dear warriors. They thought they could trace your story in ink. They thought you were just another name on a page, someone they could record, archive, label, file, and forget. They thought you were a moment, not a movement, a phase, not a force. But here's the twist they never planned for. Your evolution was never written down. It was lived. It was earned. It was carved out of storms they never survived. And when they finally sat down with their dusty folders and their smug faces, history of everyone who doubted you, something strange happened. The pages were blank. The files were empty. The ink had vanished. Every record they thought would expose you, exposed them instead. Because here's the truth. People always expect to find weakness in the ones they underestimated. They expect to see the failure, the fall apart, the moment you quit. But your name doesn't show up in the failure logs. Your energy doesn't appear in the timeline of almost. Your spirit doesn't live in the files of not quite. You don't exist in the place where they stored doubt because you never belonged there. You were never meant to fit inside their systems, their frameworks, their spreadsheets, their definitions. You didn't rise for the applause. You didn't struggle for the credit. You didn't stay standing to be documented. You stayed because you had something the world can't file, can't label, can't limit. Something that won't fit in their categories, no matter how many tabs they create. And now they're confused, angry, even, because all they have left is silence, where your failure should have been, emptiness, where your fall apart should have lived. They wanted to confirm the story they told about you, the one where you tried, and fell apart, and faded. But instead they found no proof, no chapter ending in defeat, no timestamp marking the moment you bent. Nothing. Their entire investigation became a confession. You survived everything they hoped would disprove you, and they have zero evidence of the version of you they prayed was real. Now they're staring at blank folders like they're haunted, because this is what scares them most. You didn't just beat the odds, you dissolved them. You didn't just slip through the fractures, you rewrote how fractures work. You're not a name in a system, you're the anomaly spike that rewrote the code. And now the ones who doubted you, they don't even have a paper trail to prove they ever mattered. They checked the records. They found nothing, which means they just learned the truth. You were always more than they ever knew how to measure. So now they're sitting there stunned, flipping through empty pages like the answers got up and walked out. And deep down, something starts to feel wrong to them. Not because they can't find proof of your fall apart, but because they're starting to realize that your story never belonged in their hands in the first place. They thought they were the historians of your downfall, the judges of your limits, the archivists of your journey. But you were never meant to be archived. You were meant to be lived, witnessed, survived, and rewritten in real time. Their systems weren't built for someone like you. They were built for the predictable, the documented, the explainable. People who follow the script. But you stepped into life like an anomaly in the narrative. One moment, they thought they knew where you fit. Next moment, you were operating 3 floors above their understanding. You weren't supposed to rise like that. You weren't supposed to slip through every fall apart. They whispered over you. You weren't supposed to see through the lies, grow past the limits, evolve while they stayed still. But you did. quietly, consistently, relentlessly. And now they're afraid, because if they can't track how you moved, they can't stop where you're heading. They wanted a record of every person who doubted you, everyone who mocked, dismissed, tried to shrink you down. But every file was empty, not because those people didn't exist, but because their opinion didn't matter. The universe doesn't store the words of the unqualified. The timeline doesn't bookmark the voices of cowards. Your destiny doesn't record the noise, only the movement. You know what's really wild though? The moment they opened those files and found nothing, something shifted inside them. That was the moment they realized, you're not just someone who survived doubt. You're someone who made doubt irrelevant. You turned their skepticism into silence. You turned their rumors into ghosts. And now their greatest fear is playing out right in front of them. You became undeniable without needing to be explained. That's the part that bends them. Not your rise, not your evolution, not your truth, but the fact that they have no evidence of the story ending the way they prayed it would. They wanted proof you were just like everyone else. Predictable, containable. But you bent the frame. You outlived the narrative. You became something they can't define, can't document, can't delete. Now the empty page is the most terrifying page they've ever seen, because it means this. Every failure they spoke over you never became real. Every limit they assigned to you was too small. Every doubt they whispered faded before they spoke. You weren't dissolved from the records. You were never meant to fit in them. You are the part of the story they couldn't write, the part the system never planned for, the part history can't explain. The blank page is not a mistake. It's a warning. They thought the empty files meant the data was missing. But emptiness has weight. Silence carries truth. A blank record can scream louder than 1,000 accusations. And that's what's happening now. They're staring at nothing, but that nothing is dragging reality by the collar. It's forcing them to look at the one thing they never wanted to admit. None of their predictions ever came true. Not one. All their secret group chats. All their behind-the-back conversations. Any day now, they'll fall apart. Every single one of them. Wrong. And now they're sitting with that. Heavy, uncomfortable, unavoidable. That's when the identity unraveling sets in. Not fear of you failing, but fear of you never needing their approval at all. They were waiting for your fall apart, like it was a package with tracking. They checked updates. They refreshed the screen. Nothing. They tried to verify your shift through people who knew you. None of them could confirm it. They tried to locate your weaknesses in old memories. Those memories didn't age well. They tried to analyze your silence, only to realize your silence was strategy, not surrender. See, they thought you were quiet because you were losing. Turns out you were quiet because you were learning. They thought good people disappear. Turns out they evolve off screen. They thought doubting you was safe. Turns out doubting you was recorded on their timeline, not yours. You know the most ironic part? They didn't think your story mattered enough to track. Now they're desperate to reconstruct the chapters. But the truth is this: you walked through every challenge they swore would end you. You didn't just survive doubt. You outgrew the version of you they were doubting. You became someone they can't update, can't predict, can't label. And now that the records are empty, they're forced to face reality without the comfort of a script. They can't rely on the usual story. The hero bends. The critics celebrate. The chapter closes. But what do they do when the hero never bent? When there is no evidence of fall apart? When the file they expected to be full of failure is nothing but pristine white space? That space isn't blank, it's sacred. It means you slipped through every trap, you dodged every narrative. You lived a life too fluid to archive. You became the kind of person who doesn't leave dust behind, and that terrifies them. Not because they lost control of the story, but because it proves you never belonged in their story anyway. The empty record is not an anomaly. It's not an error. It's proof that the universe kept receipts, not rumors. Anyone can track a downfall. Only the rare ones are untraceable in their rise. You're not undocumented, you're uncontainable. They thought that if they couldn't find proof of your greatness, then it couldn't be real. They assumed excellence needed a paper trail. But what they never understood is this. Real power doesn't leave footprints. It moves through dimensions they don't have clearance for. They search databases, archives, old group chats, childhood rumors, even memories that weren't theirs. And every time they pressed enter, the result was the same. No data found. They thought that meant you were empty. But the truth, it meant you were protected. There are forces in this world that guard certain souls. Some stories aren't recorded because they're not meant to be studied. They're meant to be witnessed. And they are, especially now. Think about it. They spent months expecting to uncover failures, drama, scandal, fractures in your character. Nothing. Not one text, not one lie, not one leak. Just air where they expected evidence. Now they're asking the wrong question. They're not asking, why is there no record? They're asking, how did we miss the entire plot? And that's when the realization hits. You weren't just off their radar. You were above it. You weren't hiding from them. You were outgrowing them while they were busy discussing your limits. You were breaking them in silence while they were recycling the same doubts. You were evolving into someone too large to measure. And here's the part they'll never say out loud. They're embarrassed. Embarrassed that they doubted you. Embarrassed that they underestimated you. Embarrassed that now, when they finally need proof, all they can find is their own ignorance staring back at them. Every empty file is a mirror. Every missing record is a confession. Every blank page is proof that they counted you out before they ever bothered to count you in. Let them sit with that. Let them freeze in the silence. Because now they're forced to confront something they never prepared for. The version of you that doesn't need validation to be undeniable. You became undeniable by simply outliving their expectations. You proved that real greatness doesn't broadcast. It blooms quietly, consistently, irreversibly. And now, they're late to a story that doesn't pause for late arrivals. They wanted your fall apart to be documented in high definition. Instead, the only high definition moment is them realizing they were wrong. And that's the moment the silence becomes louder than every doubt they ever whispered. The records are empty, but the truth is full, and it belongs entirely to you. Here's what they won't admit. The emptiness wasn't just confusing, it was humiliating, because they were so sure they had the story right. They were certain the record would show weakness, mistakes, proof that you weren't who you claimed to be. They thought doubt was the safest investment. They bet on your fall like it was a fixed outcome. They didn't just expect you to fade. They needed you to fade. It's how they justified their own stagnation. They thought, if they fall apart, then my excuses stand. So they waited, they watched, they refreshed the file, but nothing came. Not a single receipt. You know what that does to a certain kind of mind? It fractures it. They start rewriting history in their head. They start wondering if they ever knew you at all. They start replaying every moment where they thought they were above you. And they see now those moments age like spoiled air. The silence became a spotlight. The emptiness became evidence. Not of your lack, but of theirs. Because real doubt leaves fingerprints. You would have found at least one message, one complaint, one crack in the wall. But there was nothing. No one ever caught you slipping. No one ever had a story worth repeating. No one ever recorded your fall apart. Because it never happened. This is the part where they realize the truth. They weren't watching your journey. They were watching their projections, and they're embarrassed. Not just because you proved them wrong, but because now they know they never deserved to be right. You're not a mystery because you hid. You're a mystery because they never evolved enough to understand your frequency. They studied noise. You moved through signals. They studied patterns. You became the exception. And now, they can't categorize you, can't file you, can't label or predict or place you. They thought empty records meant failure. But empty records mean you slipped through every trap that catches ordinary people. You lived without broadcasting. You grew without announcing. You evolved without proving. You ascended without applause. That kind of evolution is intimidating to them. And to anyone who thinks power must be witnessed to exist. Now they know yours existed regardless. And now they're stuck in the worst position imaginable. They can't challenge you. They can't deny you. They can't question you. And worst of all, they can't ignore you. Because the records are empty. But the impact is not. See, here's the part the records don't show. The nights you kept going when your spirit was bending. The hours you carried weight. No one helped you lift. The moments you were your own witness, your own shelter, your own momentum. They don't have those files. They never saw them. They were too busy waiting for proof of your fall apart to recognize your rebuild. They don't understand this kind of rise, the kind that doesn't need an audience to become undeniable. They only know growth that's documented, measured, verified, your evolution. It happened in the blind spots, in the quiet corners where no one thought to look. You didn't need praise. You didn't need permission. You didn't even need to be believed. You just needed to become, and you did. That's why all the files are empty. The system couldn't track you. The blueprint couldn't contain you. The narrative couldn't narrate you. You weren't building a record. You were building a reality. Now they're staring at empty reports like, this can't be right. They thought power needed noise, but real power moves quietly until it doesn't. And now it doesn't. Now they see the impact. Now they feel the shift. Now they're scrambling for explanations. But here's the thing, and it's almost poetic. There is no explanation that fits within their world, because the version of reality they operate in, it doesn't allow for someone to evolve without their permission. It doesn't allow for strength that comes from storms they never witnessed. It doesn't allow for transformation that wasn't granted by the crowd. You bent their rules. You bent their expectations. You bent their logic. And now they're intimidated. Because what else did they get wrong? If everything they recorded was false, what else have they been blind to? See, that's the real fracture. Not the empty files, but the realization that they trusted the wrong story about you. They believed the rumor. They ignored the truth. They thought their version of you was the real one. Now all that's left is this silence and the weight of being wrong. They can't unsee it now. They can't unknow it. They can't pretend the files tell the story anymore, because the truth is not written. It's lived. And you lived it powerfully, quietly, unapologetically. You outgrew the record long before they tried to read it. And now, all that's left is the sound of their certainty dissolving. Here's the part nobody saw coming. You were never meant to exist inside their documentation. You were never meant to be archived in their systems, never meant to be validated by their metrics. You were built to transcend the entire structure. Some people are born to be seen. You were born to be undeniable, and now they're overwhelmed by that realization, because they finally understand. You're not someone who slipped through the fractures. You're someone who was never meant to fit inside their walls at all. This is what shakes them most. They can't override what they never controlled. They can't disprove what they never understood. They can't rewrite what they never contributed to. You walked your path without their approval. You built your strength without their support. You earned your wisdom without their applause. And now the bill is due, not for your fall, but for their arrogance. The empty records aren't just silence. They're judgment, a cosmic audit, a spiritual receipt. They doubted someone the universe was actively protecting. Let that settle in. They weren't just wrong. They were wrong in front of forces greater than them. Every blank page is a warning. Every missing record is a monument. Every silence is a verdict. They underestimated the wrong one. And now, every system that ignored you is glitching. Every watcher that mocked you is rethinking. Every skeptic that counted you out is counting their own words now, one reflection at a time. But you won't hear those apologies. Not because they won't say them, but because you're already gone, already evolved, already past the point of needing closure. That's the other part they never predicted. You didn't need them to believe in you for your destiny to activate. You were rising while they were researching. You were transforming while they were observing. You were becoming while they were doubting. And now they're left with questions that don't have answers. How did you do it? How did you grow? How did you survive the silence? How did you evolve past the noise? They'll never understand, because you didn't evolve in their world. You evolved in your own. That's the secret they can't file. That's the truth they can't record. That's the legacy they can't erase. There is no record of your fall apart, because it never existed. There is no proof of your weakness, because it was never permanent. And now, when they try to explain you, all they have are empty files, and an entire universe whispering, you were never theirs to define. They wanted to analyze you like a puzzle, piece by piece, trait by trait, moment by moment. They thought if they stared long enough, observed close enough, doubted hard enough, they could solve you. But you don't solve someone who was never designed for their limited logic. You don't decode a storm with a pocket calculator. You don't measure spiritual gravity with rulers built for sand. And yet, they tried. They wanted to track you, tag you, reduce you. They wanted proof, evidence, data, something they could hold up and say, see, this is who they are, this is all they are. But what happens when someone evolves faster than the world can define them? What happens when the story outpaces the storytellers? The files go empty, the records fail, the system stalls. This is where they're stuck now. Staring at blanks that used to feel like certainty. They thought doubt was neutral, but doubt ages. Doubt spoils, doubt grows weight, and now it's pressing back at them. Because every blank file is a confession of blindness. Every empty record is proof they weren't watching closely. Or worse, they were watching, but only to see you fall apart, and you didn't. That's the part that shifts their entire world. That's the part they can't file under miscellaneous. You didn't crumble. You didn't fade. You didn't disappear. You did the one thing they didn't prepare for. You won. Quietly. Completely. Without leaving debris behind. They can't point to your downfall because there was none. They can't reference your failure because it never came. They can't drag your name because it's still standing. Sharp, clear, and untouched. And now they feel that pressure, that slow, creeping realization. They weren't documenting you. You were documenting them. Their doubt, their insecurity, their inability to see brilliance forming right in front of them. And now they're exposed. Not because you proved them wrong in public, but because the universe removed their ability to pretend they were ever right. You know what's surreal? They still want a record. They want a blueprint, a breakdown, a map of how you became who you are. But the truth is simple. You didn't grow in their light. You grew in your own fire. You didn't rise for applause. You rose because silence became your soil. And now the world has to face something unsettling. A soul that evolved without witnesses. A story that unfolded without permission. A legacy that exists without proof. You can't doubt someone who outgrew the dimension where doubt was possible. And so here it is. The final truth. They can't outrun. The files are empty. Because you were never meant to fit inside one. This is where the story ends for them and begins for you. Because now they've seen it. Now they've felt it. Now they've realized something that shakes their foundation. You didn't just escape their expectations. You made their expectations irrelevant. They kept waiting for the update that never came. The breakdown that never happened. The collapse that never arrived. Every doubt they recorded is now dust. Every prediction they made is now comedy. Every whisper they spread is now a grave they dug for their own credibility. Because while they were building a case against you, you were building a future without them. And that future, it doesn't need their permission, their belief, or their understanding. They investigated the wrong thing. They studied the wrong angle. They chased the wrong outcome. They thought your silence meant weakness. But silence was the shield that let you evolve undetected. They thought your absence meant exile. But absence was the cocoon that let you transform. They thought your stillness meant the end. But stillness was the inhale before the ascent. You didn't just move beyond them. You outgrew them in real time. And now they're sitting in rooms, staring at screens, scrolling through files, looking for something to hold on to. Something that explains how you became this without their permission. But here's the final twist. There was never anything to find. You are not an accident. You are not a glitch. You are not a missing entry in their database. You are proof that some souls rise outside the system, beyond the narrative, above the doubt. You are the kind of story that isn't written. It's lived. It's remembered by the ones meant to witness it. And that's why the records are empty. Not because your life lacked meaning, but because meaning was always overflowing. Not because you were invisible, but because you were unstoppable. Not because there was no story, but because the story was never theirs to tell. This is where they finally understand. You don't belong in files. You belong in legends. You don't need footnotes. You leave echoes. You don't need proof. You are the proof. The doubters. They have nothing left. No evidence. No argument. No record. Only silence. And you, still rising. Still moving, still unfolding into something they never prepared for. A life too true to document, a journey too aligned to archive, a soul too powerful to erase. The files are empty, but your legacy is full. Let's go deeper, because every silence has a root. Every blank has a message. If you were anyone else, they would have had entire folders labeled with your failures. Screenshots, timestamps, quotes, evidence. They love evidence. They worship receipts. They build identity around the idea that they can predict who someone really is. But prediction fails when evolution is faster than observation. And you evolved at a speed their eyes couldn't track. You were changing while they were watching yesterday's version, rising while they were gossiping about last season's script, breaking patterns while they were still memorizing your old ones. They don't know how to process someone who outruns their projections. They don't know how to track someone who rises in silence. They don't know how to archive someone who deletes their relevance just by existing. So the files remain empty. Not because nothing happened, but because everything happened outside their range. And now, they're in a crisis. Not emotional, existential. Because if they were wrong about you, what else might they be wrong about? Their judgment, their intuition, their worldview, their entire identity was built on believing they could read people. And then you happened, unreadable, unmapped, unscaled. That's the real threat. Not your evolution, not your strength, not your momentum. The threat was this: you proved them blind. And now they're panicking in quiet, backpedaling in private, rewriting their own memories like it'll save their pride. But it won't. Here's truth. The universe erased the record to protect you. Not because you were fragile, but because you were becoming too powerful to reduce. Some paths don't get documented because they're not part of this world's tracking system. Some souls aren't meant to leave files. They leave vibrations. They leave imprints. They leave awakenings. They leave people saying, "I don't know how they did it, but they did." That's you. You were never meant to be proven on paper. You were meant to be experienced in real time. Not written, not filed, not stored, felt. And now here you stand. Not as a name on a record, but as a presence that refuses to be erased. They can't archive you. They can't categorize you. They can't define or contain or rewind you. You are beyond their paperwork now, beyond their doubt, beyond their language, beyond their comprehension. The story continues, but not for them. You've entered the realm where legends walk forward and critics walk away, silent. Hello, my dear warrior. So specially you arrived. You are here. Welcome. Huh? You feel that heat pressing on your skin? That's not imagination, that's the spotlight. And it locked on you like a hunter's spotlight. You didn't chase it, you didn't beg for it, but it refused to let you hide. It dragged you from the shadows, where they tried to bury you and placed you center stage, crown heavy, scars glowing like jewels. Outcast, that was the name they spat on your back. Misfit, that was the joke they whispered when you left the room. But now the same streets that mocked you are trembling, whispering louder, passing your name around like prophecy. They can't look away. Every smirk has turned into silence. Every doubt has turned into paranoia, because the light doesn't release what it claims, and it claimed you. Understand this. You are not walking into their kingdom. You are building your own throne in their ruins. The spotlight chose you, and it will never let go. They called you the outsider, the leftover, the mistake. They laughed when you sat in silence. They celebrated when you walked away alone. But silence was never weakness. It was loading. While they wasted breath mocking, you were sharpening. While they searched for applause, you were building armor in the dark. And now look, the very streets that ignored your footsteps echo your name like thunder. Outcast? That label collapsed the second the spotlight crowned you. Because royalty doesn't need validation. It demands recognition without speaking. And now your presence bends rooms, forces respect out of mouths that once spat doubt. They thought the light would blind you, but you didn't just survive under it. You unleashed it. You became the glare no one can escape. The reminder that the forgotten are the ones who return with crowns. And now, when you walk through the crowd, they don't see a misfit. They see a monarch forged in stormlight. Do you hear it? That hush that falls when you enter, the way conversations stumble, the way eyes lock then scatter. That isn't coincidence. That's the shift. Once, you were the name they used as a joke. The shadow in the corner. They never feared, but the spotlight flipped the script overnight. Now you're the center of gravity, pulling every gaze, bending every atmosphere. They can't process it. They ask in whispers, when did this happen? Who allowed this? No one allowed it. The streets declared it. The silence demanded it. Destiny sealed it. Outcast turned royalty wasn't a choice, it was inevitability. And what terrifies them most is how naturally you carry it. You don't force respect, you radiate it. You don't beg to belong, you redefine the belonging itself. Every glare you endured, every betrayal you swallowed, those weren't setbacks, they were coronations in disguise. And now their fear is just confirmation you arrived. Look closer. The crown you wear isn't made of gold, it's carved from every scar they left on you. Each insult bent into metal, each betrayal melted into steel, each night of silence hammered into authority. They thought they were breaking you, but all they did was forge royalty. And now, when your name spreads through alleys and high towers alike, it carries a weight they can't deny. They don't clap because they love you. They clap because they fear what happens if they don't. That's the kind of crown you wear. The kind that forces the world to adjust its spine when you enter. Outcast was the label they chained to you. But chains in fire don't restrain. They transform. And now, you don't just wear the crown, you are the crown. Untouchable, undeniable. A throne walking in human form. They bow not because they want to, but because royalty doesn't give them another option. Word travels fast, doesn't it? Faster than truth, louder than lies. The same streets that once laughed at you now hum your name like a warning siren. Every corner, every alley, every whisper carries the same message. The outcast went royalty mode. And what's wild is, they don't even understand how. You didn't beg for acceptance. You didn't audition for approval. You didn't sell your soul for a seat. You disappeared into silence. And when you returned, you carried an empire in your eyes. Now the streets are restless, voices rising like a tide. Who gave them this power? Who crowned them? No one crowned you. You crowned yourself. And because of that, the crown can't be taken, can't be stolen, can't be faked. That's why they tremble when they speak your name, because deep down they know the truth. The spotlight didn't make you royalty. It revealed the royalty you always were. Watch them closely now. The same mouths that mocked you twist into forced congratulations. The same eyes that once rolled at your dreams now widen, pretending joy but leaking unease, because they can't hide it anymore. Your rise unsettled the ground beneath their feet. They thought you'd stayed begging for crumbs, desperate for acknowledgement. Instead, you became the storm they whisper about behind closed doors. That's why their handshakes tremble, why their voices crack when they speak your name. Respect born from comfort is fake. Respect born from awe, that's the kind that never fades. And make no mistake, that's what they feel now. Not admiration, not kindness, awe. Awe that the outcast they buried in laughter came back crowned, untouchable, unstoppable. You don't chase their validation, you force it into existence, with nothing but your presence. That's why their smiles look weak, they're unsettled, and they should be. They'll tell each other stories now, false tales of how they always believed in you, how they knew you'd make it. Lies. When you were in the dark, no one came looking. When your silence echoed, no one asked why. When your vision was mocked, they smirked and moved on. But while they slept peacefully, you were awake, hammering your struggles into strength, sculpting your scars into armor. Every lonely night became a brick. Every broken moment became blueprint. You weren't idle. You were constructing a throne they'd never see coming. That's why your rise feels like a shockwave, because they didn't witness the work, they only see the result. They thought you vanished. In reality, you were multiplying, and when you stepped back into the streets, you weren't the same misfit. You were royalty forged in silence. Built without applause, built without witnesses, built in the dark, and that's why they'll never tear it down. You don't even need to speak now. That's the difference. Once you explained yourself to deaf ears, begged to be understood by blind eyes. Not anymore. Your silence became a language. Your presence became a command. When you step into a room, the air shifts, the temperature drops, the noise collapses. People feel you before they see you, and they adjust straighter posture, careful words, nervous laughter. That's not respect you asked for. That's power you earned. They thought strength was volume, but your calm shakes them more than any scream ever could. Because calm means control. Calm means strategy. Calm means you're already 3 moves ahead. Outcast to royalty wasn't just a change in title, it was an evolution in aura. You don't fight for space anymore. Space bends for you. You don't demand the spotlight seeks you. That's why presence alone now shakes them more than anything you could ever say. Listen carefully. Their whispers aren't insults anymore. They're rumors trembling into legends. They don't ask if you changed. They ask how you became untouchable. Some say you made a deal with destiny. Others claim you cracked the code of survival. But none of them admit the truth. You built it in silence, step by steady step. They used to dismiss you as background noise, but now your name feels like thunder in their throats. They rehearse their words before meeting you, careful not to slip, careful not to be remembered as another doubter turned liar. That's the irony. You don't even need to defend yourself. Their unease does it for you. Every whisper is a confession. Every rumor is an admission of guilt. Every retelling is proof they underestimated the wrong one. And now the streets carry your name not as gossip but as gospel. Outcast no more, you are the story. They can't stop telling. Remember when they acted like you were lucky to sit at their table. When every glance felt like a favor. Every crumb like charity. Those days are gone. The tables flipped, shattered, rebuilt under your feet. You don't beg for a seat anymore. You decide who gets invited. And here's the twist. Most of them don't. Because when you became royalty, access became expensive. Loyalty is the currency now. Truth is the price of admission. And most of them are bankrupt. That's why they tremble. They see you ascending, but they can't climb with you. They built ceilings to keep you small, but you turned ceilings into floors, and now you stand above them, not gloating, just untouchable. They wanted you crawling. Instead, you walk like a sovereign. They wanted you doubting. Instead, you move with clarity. They wanted you begging. Instead, you became the table itself. And that truth cuts deeper than any insult they ever threw. What rattles them most isn't your words, it's your quiet. Back then you argued, defended, explained. Now, nothing. You let silence do the talking, and it speaks louder than their noise ever could. Because silence means you don't need their approval. Silence means you've already won. Silence means the crown sits firm on your head. They expect explosions, tantrums, revenge, but what they face instead is a calm so sharp it slices. Sharper than rage. You don't threaten. You don't warn. You don't beg. You just appear, and that's enough. Every scar you carry speaks louder than their excuses. Every step you take writes a story they can't erase. That's why they're uneasy in your presence. Because your silence isn't emptiness. It's evidence. Evidence that you rose without them. Evidence that you built what they tried to erase. Evidence that outcast turned royalty didn't need their permission. Your silence is the crown, and it weighs heavy on their conscience. Do you notice it? The way they avoid your eyes, the way their laughter dies when you enter, the way their tone shifts when your name surfaces, that isn't respect, it's memory. They remember how they left you in the dark. They remember the smirks, the dismissals, the way they buried you under doubt, and expected you to stay down. And now, standing in front of royalty, those memories burn holes in their pride. They can't rewrite history. They can't undo the scars. And worst of all, they know you remember too. That's what unsettles them, not what you'll say, but what you know. Because knowledge is heavier than any crown. and you carry it in silence. Every smile they fake is just an attempt to cover their guilt. But guilt is loud, and weakness has no mask. They thought forgetting you would erase you. Instead, your memory turned into a mirror, and now they can't stand what they see in it. Royalty isn't handed, it's earned in silence, paid for in scars. Look at your throne. It isn't carved from gold, it's built from every insult they hurled, every betrayal you swallowed, every night you stood alone. That's why it can't be toppled. They mistake comfort for power, but true power comes from storms, from shadows, from surviving the kind of trials that would have broken them in half. And you did more than survive. You adapted. You grew sharper, colder, untouchable. They thought struggle would bury you, but it became the foundation of your empire. Every scar on your skin is an engraving on your crown, proof that you didn't just rise, you reignited. And that's what shakes them most, because they can't copy scars, they can't imitate endurance, they can't download resilience. They can only bow to it. Outcast to royalty wasn't a story. They lived through your coronation, and now they're stuck watching history bend around your name. The streets remember everything. They remember how they laughed when you were small, how they mocked your silence, how they counted you out before the game even started. They remember, and now they choke on that memory every time your name echoes through alleys and rooftops. The streets are loud now, louder than any crown could ever be. They whisper your story like scripture. The outcast went royalty mode. And here's the truth. Streets don't lie. They record every scar, every trial, every rise, and they replay it in whispers and warnings. That's why your name travels with weight, because it isn't built on fantasy. It's carved into concrete, painted on walls, carried by mouths that once cursed you. They can't erase it. They can't silence it. They can't out-talk it. You're not just walking in the light. You're carved into the pavement they walk on. That's what makes them tremble, because streets never forget royalty. Once, anyone could reach you. They could mock you, doubt you, use you, vanish when you needed them most. But royalty doesn't work like that. Access has a price now, and most can't afford it. The cost isn't money, it's loyalty, truth, alignment. Anything less, and the doors stay closed. That's what eats them alive. They used to treat you like background noise, and now your silence feels more valuable than their entire presence. They crave proximity, because proximity means power. But your aura doesn't run on charity anymore. You don't explain yourself. You don't chase. You don't bargain. You simply exist, and that alone drains their ego. The spotlight chained itself to you, not them. The throne bent to your scars, not theirs. And now they stand outside the gates, whispering your name, hoping for a glance, knowing they lost their chance. Outcast to royalty wasn't luck, it was evolution. And evolution doesn't reverse. It burns, doesn't it? Not you, them. Because the spotlight isn't kind, it exposes. It shows the cracks in their masks, the tremble in their voices, the envy hidden in their praise. They can't escape it, because the light doesn't follow them, it seeks you. And everywhere you go, it drags their shame into the open. That's why they shrink when you pass, why their conversations fall flat, why they suddenly remember the silence they gave you when you needed sound. The spotlight is relentless, and it refuses to let you fade. You didn't ask for it, but now it clings to you like destiny itself. And with every step, it grows brighter. Not because of their applause, but because your scars glow louder than their achievements. They wanted you unseen. Instead, you became unavoidable. And now their only escape is to bow their heads, because looking at you too long feels like staring into their own failure. What unsettles them isn't your rise. It's that they never saw it coming. They had you mapped out, boxed in, dismissed as predictable. In their story, you were the filler character, the shadow, the outcast who would fade quietly. But then the spotlight dragged you forward, and overnight the script collapsed. You weren't supposed to be here, crowned, elevated, untouchable. You weren't supposed to flip the order, rewrite the hierarchy, bend the streets to your name. That's why they stutter when they speak, why their compliments sound more like confessions. You remind them of their failure to calculate you, their blindness to the fire you carried. And now, every move you make rewrites history. Every step you take pulls you further from the story they tried to trap you in. They never planned for royalty. They never prepared for your crown. And now, they're forced to bow to the version of you they swore would never exist. They thought they built the rules. They thought they controlled the score. They thought the game was fixed and you were just another piece on their board. But here's what shakes them now. You didn't just win. You rewrote the entire game. You turned their traps into lessons, their betrayals into blueprints, their silence into strategy. Now every move you make exposes how shallow their system always was. They scramble, trying to adjust, but it's too late, because you don't play by their rules anymore. You are the rules. The spotlight chose you, not them. The streets crowned you, not them. And now every step you take isn't part of their plan. It's a new reality they can't control. Outcast to royalty wasn't an upgrade. It was a takeover. You didn't sneak through their gates. You erased the blueprint and built a fortress of your own. And now they're not just losing the game. They're playing on a board you designed. Step back for a moment and see it clearly. Your presence alone now carries the weight of kingdoms. You don't need to argue. You don't need to prove. You don't even need to raise your voice. The room bends before you speak, because everyone feels it. The aura of someone who was once erased but returned untouchable. That weight isn't arrogance. It's evidence. Evidence of every storm you endured. Every silence you turned into strategy. Every betrayal you forged into armor. They can't match it. They can't copy it. Because presence like yours isn't rehearsed. It's earned in trials, built in shadows, crowned by scars. That's why they shift nervously when you walk in. Because standing near you feels like standing in judgment. Their lies feel smaller. Their masks feel weaker. Their excuses feel louder. And you don't even react. Because true royalty doesn't announce itself. It arrives, and everything else adjusts. Listen carefully. It's in their voices now. The same people who once spoke your name with mockery now whisper it like a prayer. They don't dare say it too loud, because your rise reminds them of their fall. Every word they choose around you is cautious, rehearsed, trembling beneath a mask of forced respect. But masks don't last. The cracks show in the way they stumble, the way they overcompensate, the way they try to rewrite history with false praise. But you don't need their words. You see the unease in their eyes. And unease doesn't lie. They thought you'd spend forever explaining yourself. But now, silence is your language and presence is your proof. They can't debate it. They can't deny it. They can't dilute it. The streets already confirmed it. The spotlight already sealed it. The outcast ascended. And now their tone isn't choice, it's surrender. There's a point where even enemies stop arguing because the truth is too heavy to fight. You've reached that point. You don't need to convince, you don't need to prove, you don't need to battle for recognition. Your very existence became the evidence. That's why they move different around you now. They can't ignore you. They can't out-talk you. They can't overshadow you. The spotlight locked onto you and erased every excuse they had. They wanted you small, so their comfort stayed intact. But royalty doesn't shrink. It expands, it consumes, it dominates. And now your presence isn't a debate, it's a fact. They can whisper, they can scheme, they can wish you back into silence, but none of it matters. Because undeniability is the one throne no one can topple, and you sit on it now, outcast. To royalty wasn't just a rise, it was the correction of history. And history bows to the undeniable. Look behind you. Do you see it? Not people, not applause, an empire. An empire stitched together from nights of struggle, days of silence, years of being overlooked. Every step you take now casts a shadow, and that shadow is heavier than their whole existence. They feel it when you walk by, the reminder that you built alone what they couldn't build together. Your shadow carries lessons, scars, victories, and warnings. It stretches across alleys and boardrooms alike, whispering the same truth. The outcast rules now. They can't outrun it. They can't deny it, because your shadow moves faster than their lies. That's the power of an empire forged in solitude. It follows you everywhere, a crown even brighter in the dark. They thought shadows meant weakness. They didn't realize shadows grow longest when the light is fiercest. And the spotlight never leaves you now. Your empire is in your shadow, and your shadow rules the streets. This is the part they never planned for. The permanence. Trends fade, noise dies, clout evaporates. But legacy? Legacy stays. And your legacy was carved the moment the spotlight refused to release you. Outcast to royalty wasn't a season. It was a coronation, written in scars, signed in silence, sealed by survival. Now every street corner, every whispered conversation, every cautious glance carries your imprint. They can't undo it. They can't erase it. They can't outshine it. Because royalty isn't about thrones or titles. It's about undeniability. You don't just walk with power. You exist as proof that betrayal breeds crowns, that silence forges storms, that outcasts rewrite kingdoms. They'll study your rise for years, dissect your scars, try to explain your glow, but they'll never replicate it. Because royalty mode isn't learned, it's lived, and you lived it fully. The spotlight chose you, it clung to you, and now the world bows forever.